Elias Ward had seen many strange things since humanity joined the wider galaxy, but nothing prepared him for this. He stood inside the Grand Hall of the Galactic Coalition, a place built by minds that did not think like humans. The ceiling curved high above him, glowing with soft alien light. Tall figures of many species surrounded him, their shapes sharp, smooth, scaled, or floating. They spoke in calm voices through translators, discussing him as if he were not standing there. Elias wore his old combat uniform. It was clean, but the marks of war still lived in his eyes. The war had been short, violent, and confusing. Humanity had entered it as a junior ally. Somehow, by endurance and stubborn refusal to fall, they had helped turn the tide. That was why Elias was here. Human soldier Elias Ward, the Central Counselor announced. The alien's voice echoed, layered with artificial harmony. For valor under fire, loyalty to the Coalition, and exceptional effectiveness against the Karax Dominion, you are to receive a traditional honor. Elias straightened. He had expected a medal. Maybe land rights on a distant colony. Something symbolic. Humans liked symbols. A platform rose from the floor beside him. Someone stood on it. She was tall, but slimmer than most species Elias had seen. Her skin was a soft silver blue, marked with faint patterns that looked almost like stars. Her dark eyes were large and reflective, filled with something Elias recognized instantly: fear. This individual, the counselor continued, is Kathira of the Lathari species. By coalition law, her people were designated servile following their defeat. She is now legally transferred to you as property in recognition of your service. The word hit Elias harder than any weapon ever had. Property. For a moment, he thought the translator had failed. He waited for correction. None came. The hall filled with approving sounds from the other species. This, clearly, was normal to them. Elias felt his stomach tighten. He looked at Kathira. She did not look at the council. She looked at the floor. Her hands were held together in front of her, wrists wrapped with a thin control band. She stood very still, as if movement itself was dangerous. Elias remembered prisoners of war. He remembered civilians hiding in ruins. He remembered the faces of people who had lost everything. This was the same. I don't understand, Elias said slowly. His voice sounded small in the massive hall. You're giving me a person? The counselor tilted its head. A sentient servile unit, yes. Your species uses the term slave, according to our records. The word echoed in Elias's mind. Slave. Humanity had bled to erase that word from its own history. It was not perfect. Not even close. But this was something they had sworn never to accept again. She's not a thing, Elias said. She's alive. Several council members shifted. Confusion rippled through the chamber. All servile species are alive, another counselor replied. That does not conflict with ownership. Elias clenched his jaw. He wanted to shout. He wanted to walk out. But he also saw the control band on Kathira's wrists. He noticed the faint tremor she tried to hide. If he refused, what would happen to her? What happens if I don't accept? Elias asked. A pause. Then the answer came, casual and cold. She would be reassigned. Elias did not need to ask what that meant. He had seen enough during the war, enough camps, enough transport ships. He took a slow breath. I accept, he said. The hall filled with approval again. Kathira flinched. Elias turned toward her immediately. Not like that, he said softly, even though he knew she might not understand his language without the translator. I won't hurt you. She looked up then. Their eyes met. Hers were dark and wide, full of disbelief. Her people had lost their war in weeks. Their cities were taken. Their fleets burned. Since then, kindness had been rare. The control band unlocked with a soft sound as the platform lowered. The counselor spoke again. You are now responsible for her function, maintenance, and behavior. May your ownership be productive. Ownership. Elias left the hall with Kathira walking beside him, silent as a shadow. Guards watched them but did not interfere. To them, this was routine. To Elias, it felt like stepping into a nightmare. They reached the transport assigned to him, a standard coalition shuttle. Inside, the door closed, sealing them away from the watching eyes. Elias leaned against the wall and let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Kathira stood near the door, unmoving. "You can sit," Elias said. She did not respond. He frowned, then remembered. "Translator," he said, activating the unit on his collar. "Can you understand me?" "Yes," Kathira replied quietly. Her voice was soft, musical, and heavy with caution. "I'm Elias," he said. I'm sorry about what just happened." Her eyes flicked to him, then away. "You are not required to apologize," she said. "You are my owner." The word hurt. "I don't want to be," Elias said. That made her look at him again. This time, confusion replaced fear. "That is not possible," she said. "Ownership was legally transferred." "Maybe," Elias replied. "But where I come from, owning people is wrong." She studied him carefully, as if trying to see a trick. "Many owners say unusual things at first." "All," Elias shook his head. "I'm not like them." The shuttle lifted off. Stars stretched outside the viewport. For a while, neither spoke. "Kathira," Elias said finally. "What were you before the war?" She hesitated. Then, slowly, "I was a systems analyst. I studied stellar energy flows." Elias blinked. "You're a scientist." "Yes, not a servant. Not a tool, a scientist." "My sister was a scientist," Elias said quietly. "She studied climate engineering. She died when the Karax bombed Earth's Pacific arcology." Kathira's eyes softened, just slightly. "I am sorry." The silence that followed was different. Not fear-filled. Something else. When they arrived at the human military residence station, Elias led her to his assigned quarters. It was small but clean. A bed. A table. A viewport. He stopped at the door. "This is my room," he said. "You can take the bed. I'll sleep on the floor." Kathira stared at him. "Why?" "Because you're not property," he said. "And because you've lost enough already." Her hands trembled now. "If I fail to obey," she said, voice tight, "you are permitted to punish me." "Has a fell tua." For the felled. Elias felt anger rise not at her, but at the system that had taught her this. "You don't have to obey me," he said firmly. "You're safe here. No punishment. No commands." She looked at him for a long time. Then she whispered, "You are very dangerous." He gave a sad smile. "That's what they keep saying about humans." That night, Elias lay awake on the floor, staring at the ceiling. He could not stop thinking about the council, about the easy way they had handed a living being to him like equipment. If this was how the galaxy worked, then humanity had stepped into something far darker than any war. In the other corner of the room, Kathira sat on the bed, watching him quietly. For the first time since her capture, a small, fragile thought formed in her mind. Maybe defeat did not always mean the end. And for the first time since the war ended, Elias realized something terrifying and clear. This was not a reward. It was a test. The station moved through space in calm silence. But inside Elias Ward's quarters, nothing felt calm. Morning cycle lights slowly brightened the room. Elias opened his eyes and sat up from the floor. His body ached the way it always did after sleep, old injuries reminding him they were still there. He glanced toward the bed. Kathira was already awake. She sat upright, hands folded in her lap, eyes open and alert. She had not slept much. Elias could see it in the way her shoulders stayed tense, ready for something bad to happen. "You didn't have to stay awake," Elias said gently. "I was not instructed to sleep," she replied. He sighed quietly. "You don't need instructions here." She nodded, but the habit was deep. Fear had a long memory. Elias stood and stretched. "I'm going to get food," he said. "You're welcome to come. Or stay. Your choice." She hesitated. I should accompany you. You don't have to, he repeated. I want to, she said after a moment. That was enough for him. The station's corridors were busy with different species. Coalition officers walked with purpose. Drones floated overhead. A few aliens glanced at Elias, and then at Kathira, their eyes sharp with curiosity. Some showed approval. Others showed confusion. Kathira noticed every look. Her steps slowed. They see you, she whispered. They see us, Elias corrected. At the food hall, Elias chose simple human rations. He also picked up a neutral nutrient plate, approved for multiple species. He set it on the table between them. Kathira stared at it. You are sharing? Yes. That is inefficient. So is cruelty, Elias said calmly. She studied him again, the way she always did. Like she was trying to solve a puzzle that should not exist. They ate in silence for a while. Why did you accept me? She asked suddenly. You could have refused. Elias paused. If I refused, they would have given you to someone else. Yes, she said. That is normal. I didn't want that, he replied. She lowered her eyes. You accepted ownership to prevent harm. I accepted responsibility, he corrected. There's a difference. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the table. In coalition law, there is not. Then coalition law is wrong, Elias said. The words were quiet, but heavy. After the meal, Elias reported to his commanding officer, Colonel Ramirez. She was a tall woman, with sharp eyes, and a voice that carried authority even when she whispered. She saw Kathira standing behind him. So it's true, Ramirez said. They actually did it. They did, Elias replied. Ramirez closed the door to her office. You realize this puts us in a bad position. I realize it puts us in a real position, Elias said. She studied him. What are you planning? I'm not planning to own a person, Elias said. Ever. Ramirez exhaled slowly. You know how this galaxy works. Traditions older than our species. Traditions don't make things right, Elias said. No, she agreed. But they make things dangerous. She glanced at Kathira. Does she understand what's happening? Kathira straightened. I understand that I am legally bound to him, she said, and that he refuses to act as expected. Ramirez raised an eyebrow. Smart one. Kathira said nothing. There's pressure already, Ramirez continued. The coalition sees humans as effective, but unpredictable. If you break protocol publicly, they'll say we don't respect their system. Elias crossed his arms. We don't. Ramirez's mouth twitched slightly. No, we don't. But diplomacy is about timing. She leaned forward. There may be a way. Elias waited. There's an old clause, she said, rarely used. If a recognized war hero formally emancipates a servile individual, it forces a legal review. Kathira's eyes widened. Emancipation? Freedom, Elias said. Her breath caught. But, Ramirez continued, it creates a mess. The coalition hates messes. I don't mind, Elias said. I know, Ramirez replied. That's why I'm warning you. That evening, Elias filed the request. The response came faster than he expected. Coalition legal representatives arrived the next day. Tall, thin beings with metallic skin and glowing eyes. They spoke politely, but there was tension under every word. Your request is unusual, one of them said, and disruptive. It's humane, Elias replied. The term is irrelevant, the alien said. The servile system maintains stability. Stability built on suffering, Elias said. Kathira stood beside him, silent but present. You misunderstand, another representative said. Suffering is temporary. Order is eternal. Elias shook his head. You've never been human. The meeting ended without resolution. Word spread quickly. Other servile beings on the station began to watch Elias and Kathira. Quietly. Hopefully. Fearfully. One night, Kathira spoke while they looked out at the stars. If you free me, she said, they may punish you. I know. They may punish your species. I know. She turned to him. Then why continue? Elias thought of Earth, of broken cities, of old promises. Because if we stop, he said, we become like them. Kathira was silent for a long time. My people believed intelligence would protect us, she said softly. We believed usefulness meant safety. She looked at him. We were wrong. Maybe, Elias said. Or maybe you just hadn't met humans yet. The coalition inquiry was announced 2 days later. Formal. Public. Elias stood before another council chamber, Kathira at his side. This time, the atmosphere was colder. You are charged with undermining coalition law, the counselor said, by attempting to nullify legal ownership. I'm charged with refusing slavery, Elias replied. A murmur spread. Your emotional response is noted, the counselor said. But irrelevant. Kathira stepped forward. I request permission to speak, she said. Silence followed. You are property, the counselor said. Your voice has no standing. Elias moved instantly. Then this hearing is meaningless, the council paused. Let her speak, one voice said. Kathira lifted her head. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. My species contributed knowledge, energy systems, medicine, she said. We were not warriors. We were defeated, and therefore labeled lesser. She looked around the chamber. If defeat defines worth, then none of you are safe forever. The chamber erupted in noise. The council adjourned the hearing. That night, messages began to arrive. Quiet ones, hidden ones, from servile beings across coalition space. Hope. Elias sat at the table, reading them, his face serious. Kathira watched him. You have started something. He nodded. I know. Are you afraid? Yes, Elias said honestly. But that's never stopped humans before. Outside the viewport, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere in that darkness, chains were beginning to crack, and neither of them knew what the galaxy would do when they finally broke. The coalition inquiry did not slow down. It grew. What began as a legal review turned into something much larger. News spread across stations and worlds. A human soldier had refused ownership. A servile being had spoken before the council. For the first time in centuries, the system felt pressure from the inside. Elias Ward felt it everywhere he went. Security followed him openly now. Coalition officials watched every interaction. Human command sent advisors, not to stop him, but to make sure he stayed alive. Kathira was never left alone, not for protection, but for control. Yet even under watch, change moved quietly. Servile workers paused when Elias passed. Some lowered their heads in respect. Others looked up, eyes bright with something new. Possibility. Kathira noticed it most. They are watching you, she said one evening, as they walked through a maintenance ring. They're watching you too, Elias replied. She shook her head. No, they are watching what you represent. That truth settled heavily between them. Human diplomats arrived 3 days later. Ambassador Liu led them, calm and precise, her expression unreadable. She met Elias in a secure room, Kathira present by request. You've made quite an impression, Liu said. I didn't mean to, Elias replied. I just didn't want to be part of this. That's how most human revolutions start, Liu said dryly. She turned to Kathira. You understand the risk he's taking? Yes, Kathira said. He risks everything. For one life. For the idea behind it, Elias corrected. Ambassador Liu nodded. The coalition is divided. Some see this as a threat. Others see opportunity. Opportunity for what? Elias asked. Change, she said. Or collapse. The next inquiry session was broadcast across coalition space. The chamber was full. More species than Elias had ever seen gathered in one place. Screens floated with observers from distant systems. Servile worlds watched in silence. The lead counselor spoke. Human Elias Ward, your actions have caused unrest. Entire labor systems are destabilizing. Then they were fragile to begin with, Elias replied. You stand accused of inspiring rebellion. Elias looked around the chamber. I inspired thought. The council turned to Kathira. You may speak again. Briefly. She stepped forward, her posture straight, her voice calm. My people were enslaved because we lost a war, she said. Not because we were cruel. Not because we were dangerous. Only because we were weak. She paused. If weakness is a crime, then every species here has been guilty at some point. Murmurs spread. One human showed me dignity, she continued. Not because of law, but because of choice. She looked directly at the council. That choice is spreading. The council called for recess. Outside the chamber, chaos waited. Servile workers had stopped across multiple stations. Not violently, they simply refused to move. Production slowed. Supply chains stalled. Messages poured in from enslaved worlds, demanding hearings, representation, review. Coalition stability began to fracture. Military fleets repositioned, not to attack humans, but to prepare for unrest. Elias stood in a quiet corridor afterward, feeling the weight of it all press down on him. I never wanted this, he said. Kathira stood beside him. No one who changes history ever does. Human Command sent a clear message that day. It was broadcast openly, without threats. Humanity would not participate in or benefit from servile systems. No slave labor. No servile contracts. No exceptions. If required, humanity would withdraw from coalition space entirely. The galaxy reacted with shock. Some species mocked the statement. Others panicked. Human logistics, engineering, and military coordination had become critical since the war. Losing them would hurt. More importantly, it exposed something dangerous. A major power had drawn a line. Coalition leadership convened an emergency session. This time, Elias was not summoned. Kathira was. She stood alone before them. You are no longer classified as servile during testimony, the counselor said. Temporary status. Temporary freedom, Kathira replied calmly. The council did not respond. You are asked to speak for your kind, the counselor said. I speak only for myself, Kathira replied. Others will speak for themselves soon enough. She described her people's capture, the camps, the reassignment process, the quiet loss of identity. She did not accuse, she explained. That was worse. When the session ended, the council delayed judgment again. Delays became the norm. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. Independent species, ones never enslaved but never powerful, began to side with humans. They saw the servile system for what it was. A weapon waiting to be used against them one day. Pressure built from all sides. Elias received a private message late one night. It was short. If emancipation proceeds, consequences will follow. He showed it to Kathira. She nodded. They are afraid. So am I, Elias admitted. The coalition finally issued its ultimatum. Humanity was given a choice: publicly retract support for emancipation, or face sanctions, isolation, and possible conflict. Human leadership met for hours. Elias was asked to speak. He stood before screens filled with faces from Earth, Mars, the outer colonies. I'm not special, he said. I didn't plan this. I just saw something wrong and refused to accept it. He looked tired, honest. If the price of peace is becoming something we hate, he continued, then it's not peace. It's just quiet. Silence followed. Then the vote came in. Unanimous. Humanity would not retreat. The coalition expected anger. Instead, they received resignation. Human fleets began slow withdrawal from shared sectors. Human engineers shut down shared infrastructure gracefully, transferring control without damage. Trade paused. The galaxy felt the absence immediately. Servile worlds felt something else. Hope turned into action. Uprisings began, not violent, but total. Entire populations refused assigned roles. Administrators found themselves alone. The coalition could not suppress everyone. Under mounting pressure, the council reconvened for a final decision. Elias and Kathira stood together this time. The lead counselor's voice lacked its former confidence. The servile classification system is hereby suspended, it announced. Pending review. Arda. The chamber erupted. Suspended. Not ended. Not destroyed. But cracked. Kathira closed her eyes. Tears formed, slow and bright. Elias felt his knees weaken. the council continued. Kathira of the Lethari is recognized as a free individual. The control band fell away, inert. For the first time, no law stood between her and the stars. Afterward, in the quiet of the station's observation deck, Kathira stood free beside Elias. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now?" Elias said. "Now the hard part starts." She smiled slightly. "You humans are strange." "We know," Elias replied. Beyond the glass, ships moved in careful patterns, a galaxy adjusting to a new truth. Humanity had not conquered it. They had simply refused to kneel to its worst idea. And the universe was still deciding what to do about that. The suspension did not end the servile system. It broke it. Across coalition space, administrators froze. Laws contradicted themselves. Old enforcement codes failed when confronted with the new ruling. Entire departments waited for guidance that never came. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy hesitated. That hesitation changed everything. Servile worlds did not return to work. They did not riot or burn cities. They simply stopped obeying. Factories went silent. Mining fleets stayed docked. Agricultural worlds halted shipments. The machine that had fed the coalition for generations began to starve. Coalition leadership tried to respond with authority. But authority only works when people believe in it, and belief was gone. Elias Ward watched the reports from a quiet human outpost station. He was no longer wearing a uniform. He had officially resigned his commission 2 days after Kathira was declared free. The war was over for him, but the consequences of his choice were just beginning. Kathira stood beside him, reading the same reports. Her posture was different now. Straighter, lighter. "They cannot force compliance," she said. "Not everywhere, not all at once. They built a system that depended on silence," Elias replied. Once people started talking, it was already over. Humanity kept its distance. No threats, no fleets moving into position. Just a steady message repeated across open channels. Humans would trade with free worlds. Humans would ally with equals. Humans would not participate in systems of ownership. Some coalition species called it moral posturing. Others called it economic warfare. But the truth was simpler. Humans had options, and they were willing to walk away. Within weeks, several coalition members formally withdrew from the servile framework to protect their own stability. Smaller powers followed. Each withdrawal weakened the old order further. The council met again, but this time the chamber was half empty. The final vote came quietly. The servile classification was abolished. No grand announcement, no celebration, just a legal update transmitted across 1,000 systems. It was done, not because of kindness, because it no longer worked. Kathira received the message while standing near a viewport overlooking a free Lethari transport for the first time since her capture. Her hands shook as she read the confirmation. Her people were no longer property. She turned to Elias. "It is finished." He shook his head gently. "No. It's just started. Rebuilding took time. The galaxy had relied on forced labor for too long. Free systems struggled at first. Production slowed. Mistakes were made. Some worlds faced shortages. Others faced chaos. Human advisors helped where invited. Not as masters. Not as saviors. As partners. Elias refused every offer of promotion, title, or public honor. He stayed out of the spotlight, working quietly as a liaison between free worlds and human settlements. Kathira returned to her people. She was welcomed not as a victim, but as a voice. She spoke of what she had seen, of fear, of dignity, of one human who had refused to accept what everyone else called normal. Her people listened. Months later, she stood before a newly formed interstellar assembly. Not the old coalition. Something smaller. Something cautious. Something new. Elias watched from the gallery. Kathira addressed the chamber calmly. "Freedom is not efficiency," she said. "It is slower. It is harder. But it is stable in ways ownership never was." She paused. "We were told this galaxy was orderly. It was not. It was silent." The chamber remained quiet. "Humans did not free us with weapons," she continued. They freed us by refusing to be rewarded for our suffering. When the session ended, Elias did not applaud. He simply stood and waited. Later, they walked together along a human-built promenade, overlooking a shared starport. Ships of many designs docked and departed. No servile markings. No ownership codes. "I never thanked you properly," Kathira said. "You don't have to," Elias replied. "I want to," she said. "You lost your career." He smiled slightly. "I gained sleep." She laughed softly. The sound still surprised her. "Do you know what the galaxy calls this era now?" she asked. Elias shrugged. "I've heard a few names. They call it the human question," she said. "What's the question?" She looked out at the stars. "If one species could reject power it did not earn, what does that say about the rest of us?" Elias thought about that. "Probably scares them," he said. "Yes," she agreed. "But it also gives them a choice." Years passed. The old coalition dissolved quietly. In its place rose networks of free systems, trade accords, defense pacts built on consent rather than control. Not perfect, never perfect, but better. Elias aged. His hair went gray. His scars never faded. He spent his days advising, teaching, and occasionally telling younger humans why some rewards were not worth accepting. Kathira became an ambassador, then a historian. She made sure the story was recorded accurately, not as legend, as fact. On the anniversary of the servile system's abolition, a memorial was placed in neutral space. It bore no statues, only words. It did not name Elias Ward. It did not name Kathira. It read, "Here ended the age where victory meant ownership. Here began the age where survival meant respect." A group of young cadets once asked Elias why humans had taken such a risk. He answered honestly, "Because some lines matter," he said. "And once you see one, you don't get to pretend it isn't there." The galaxy did not become human. It became something else. Something that remembered. And far out among the stars, long after the war and the chains and the fear, one truth remained clear. In every language spoken across free space, humanity had been given a slave as a reward. And instead of accepting the galaxy as it was, they forced it to become better.